Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today. When you match a man's distance, you shake up his whole understanding of who you are and what he thought he had. See, most men get comfortable. They think you'll always text first, always show up, always fix the silence. They get used to your consistency, your presence, your effort. The moment you step back and mirror the same distance he's giving you, that's the moment his whole system wakes up. Suddenly he's replaying messages you didn't send, checking for calls you didn't make, and wondering why the energy feels different. You didn't change, you just stopped over giving where it wasn't appreciated. When you match a man's distance, the very first thing that happens is his comfort zone gets shaken. See, most men build a rhythm around the effort you give. They get used to the way you show up, the way you respond quickly, the way you care without being asked, the way you fill in the emotional gaps that they leave open. Over time, that becomes his normal. He starts believing that no matter how much he pulls back, you will somehow hold everything together. He doesn't realize he's leaning on your consistency until the moment you decide to match the distance he's giving you. That single shift in energy hits harder than any argument, any question, or any explanation you could offer. When you stop showing up the same way, he starts to feel an unfamiliar space forming between you, and that's where the awakening begins. He begins to sense something is off, even if he can't fully understand it. Your silence speaks louder than any confrontation, because silence removes the comfort of excuses. When you match his distance, it disrupts the pattern he depended on. Suddenly, he begins to notice the things he ignored, the read messages, the missed calls, the lack of effort coming from his side. It all becomes clear because he no longer has your energy masking his lack of presence. A man feels that shift deeply because distance forces him into reflection. It puts pressure on the place where he once took your closeness for granted. He begins to question why you're not doing what you used to do. He wonders if he pushed too far, if he misread your patience, or if he underestimated your strength. When you match his distance, you're not being rude or resentful. You're simply giving him a mirror to look into. And a man who has been coasting on your effort doesn't always enjoy the reflection he sees. Disruption of his comfort zone also exposes the truth about how invested he really was. When you step back, some men suddenly realize how much they relied on your emotional labor. They depended on your effort to make the relationship feel alive. They expected you to fix things before they broke, to close the gap before it got too wide, to initiate conversations so they didn't have to. Matching his distance removes the safety net, and without that net, he has to decide whether to step up or fall away. Shift also taps into something deeper, a man's pride and ego. When he feels you pulling back, he starts wondering if someone else has your attention. Not necessarily another person, but maybe your goals, your self-respect, your peace. Suddenly, he realizes he's no longer the center of your emotional world, and that realization stings. It challenges him, pushes him to reflect on why he allowed the distance to grow in the first place. Because when a man is used to being the priority, but wakes up and feels the absence of your energy, it hits him in a way nothing else can. When you match a man's distance, something powerful happens inside him that he didn't expect. A man who was taking you for granted suddenly feels the shift, and it hits him in a way he cannot ignore. At first, he may pretend like he's unbothered. He might act like he doesn't notice the gap you created by stepping back. But deep down, something inside him starts to stir. He becomes more alert, more aware, and more careful because your energy was a comfort to him, even if he never admitted it out loud. He grew used to the idea that you would always be there, always respond, always give, always show warmth even when he offered nothing but coldness in return. When you match his distance, You interrupt this pattern, and the interruption forces him to confront what he overlooked. A man rarely realizes the emotional support he was receiving until that support disappears. Your messages used to arrive before he even felt the silence. Your concern used to show up before he asked. Your presence used to give him the emotional reassurance he didn't realize he depended on. But now, with you stepping back, the emotional cushion is gone. Suddenly, every message you don't send becomes noticeable. Every moment of silence becomes louder. Every hour without your attention feels heavier. And the man who once assumed you'd always reach out starts questioning why he's not hearing from you anymore. He also starts questioning himself. He wonders if he pushed you too far. He asks himself if he missed the signs earlier, the signs showing you were getting tired of carrying the entire emotional load. A man who was relaxed and confident in your attachment starts feeling insecure when you match his distance. Not because you did something wrong, because he knows deep down that he didn't give enough. Your absence exposes the truth he tried to avoid. He was comfortable, you were giving, and the balance was never equal. And now he finally feels the imbalance. Matching his distance becomes a wake-up call. It makes him analyze whether he genuinely wanted the connection or whether he simply enjoyed the attention you were providing. Many men don't realize how much they rely on someone's presence until that presence stops smoothing over the rough edges. He starts thinking about moments he brushed you off, times he left you waiting, conversations he didn't put effort into. And now, because you gave him a taste of his own energy, he's confronted with his own behavior in a way that's impossible to deny. What truly shakes him is not anger, not confrontation, but the sudden reality that you are no longer moving toward him. The access he thought he had is no longer guaranteed. The certainty he felt is replaced by doubt. And that doubt makes him rethink everything. He begins to see how easily a person can lose something valuable by assuming it will never leave. He starts realizing that the distance he created is now the distance he must face. And for the first time, he feels what you felt, the confusion, the silence, the uncertainty, and he can no longer hide from the fact that he created the very situation he's now uncomfortable living in. When you match a man's distance, you force him into a level of reflection that he has avoided for a long time. Most men move through relationships without questioning their effort because someone else is doing the emotional work for them. They go with the flow, letting you initiate, letting you maintain the closeness, letting you keep the connection alive, even when they're barely contributing. When you step back and mirror the silence he gave you, he is suddenly left alone with his own thoughts. There is no message from you to distract him, no check-in to comfort him, no warmth to counterbalance his lack of effort. For the first time, he has to ask himself if he truly values this connection or if he was only enjoying the benefits of your consistency. This reflection becomes uncomfortable because it exposes the truth he tried to ignore. A man who was simply enjoying attention without giving commitment starts realizing that your effort was never supposed to be one-sided. The encouragement you gave, the patience you showed, the understanding you offered, none of that was guaranteed. When you match his distance, he begins to feel the emptiness created by his own lack of presence. Suddenly, he can see the difference between a relationship that grows and a relationship he allowed to stagnate. And that realization makes him question if he has been showing up the way a real man should. The silence forces him to evaluate his intentions. It makes him see whether he was genuinely invested or just going through the motions. Many men don't understand the power of their absence until they're confronted with someone who stops trying to fill the gaps for them. You stepping back makes him wonder if he ever gave enough. He replays moments when you reached out, moments when you showed care, moments when you supported him, and he asks himself why he didn't match that same energy. He might not have answers yet, but he can no longer ignore the fact that you noticed the imbalance and responded accordingly. Matching his distance also shows him the reality of emotional work. It becomes obvious that you were the one carrying the connection forward. And now that you've stepped back, he's faced with the uncomfortable truth that the relationship only felt stable because you held it together. That's a humbling moment for a man who assumed everything was fine. No one likes realizing they were the reason something wasn't growing. It's easier to blame circumstances, timing, or distractions. But distance takes away those excuses and leaves only honesty. And in that honesty, he must finally decide what he wants. If he really cared, he will realize that his effort hasn't matched yours, and he will feel a pull to correct it. If he wasn't serious, the distance you create becomes the mirror that shows exactly how detached he really was. But either way, matching his distance reveals truth about him, truth about you, and truth about whether he values connection or simply values convenience. When you match a man's distance, you reveal something he never expected to see: his true intentions. A man can pretend with words, he can act like he cares, he can play along when the energy is coming from you, but the moment you stop over-giving, the mask falls off. Distance is powerful because it removes the comfort of guessing, separates those who were truly interested from those who were only interested when things were convenient. When you stop moving toward him, when you stop filling the silence, when you stop putting in effort he never matched, you force him to show what was real and what was just talk. The ones who were never serious will drift even further away, not because they don't notice your absence, but because they were never planning to step up in the first place. You matching their distance gives them a chance to quietly leave without taking responsibility, because they never wanted to invest emotionally. These are the men who enjoyed the attention but didn't want the commitment. They loved the idea of being cared for but didn't want the responsibility of caring back. Your distance exposes that quickly. They stop trying, stop checking in, stop pretending, and suddenly what you thought was confusing becomes clear. He was only there when you were doing the work. But then there are the other men, the real ones. When you match their distance, they don't run. They don't disappear. They feel the shift and they come forward, because a man who genuinely values you will not let space grow between you. He doesn't want silence to turn into separation. He doesn't want misunderstandings to become permanent. When he feels you pulling back, awakens something inside him. Self-awareness, maturity. A real man steps in, not away. He tries to communicate, tries to understand what changed, tries to meet you halfway because he knows he hasn't been giving enough. That's the thing about distance. It makes the intentions visible. You don't have to ask a man if he cares. You don't have to question his feelings. You don't have to decode mixed signals. Just step back and watch what he does. The right man will adjust his behavior. The wrong man will reveal his disinterest. And the beautiful part is you don't have to say a single word. Your silence does the work. Your boundaries speak for you. Your self-respect reveals the truth. He can't hide behind excuses anymore. Matching his distance also reveals whether he was with you for emotional connection or for emotional convenience. If he cares, he won't let your silence stay silent for long. He'll reach out. He'll try to close the gap. He'll show effort that was missing before. But if he was using you for attention or validation, your distance feels like a door closing, and he won't bother trying to stop it. And that's how you finally learn who was really there for you and who was only there because you made it easy. Distance draws the line, exposes the intention, and shows you without confusion who is built for real connection and who is pretending to be. When you match a man's distance, Your silence becomes louder than anything you could have ever said. A lot of men get used to a woman's presence, not because they're bad people, because they get comfortable. They start believing your energy is endless, your patience is automatic, and your effort is guaranteed. They stop noticing all the little things you do because those things became routine for them. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop pouring into someone who's not pouring back, he finally hears the sound of what he has been ignoring. Your quiet becomes a message, and that message says more than your words ever could. Men notice absence much faster than they notice effort. When you're giving, they feel it but don't always appreciate it. But when you pull away, the void speaks. The empty space where your good mornings used to be, the silence where your encouragement used to sit, the distance where your warmth once lived, all of that hits him when you stop giving. He starts replaying old conversations, scrolling through messages, wondering why the energy feels different. He begins checking his phone more, waiting for something from you, and now he's realizing just how deeply he depended on your consistent presence. That's the power of silent behavior. It makes a man evaluate what he lost before he truly loses it. Your silence also becomes a reflection of your worth. When you don't argue, don't chase, don't over-explain, it shows him you're not fighting for a position in his life. You're not begging for clarity. You're not forcing a connection. You are choosing yourself. And that scares a man who thought you would always stay, no matter how little he gave. He starts wondering what changed in you, gave you the strength to step back, and why your energy no longer revolves around him. He begins to see that your presence was never something he earned. It was something you offered, and you can just as easily take it back. Silence also teaches him the value of your emotional support. A lot of men don't realize that encouragement, peace, stability, and understanding are not traits everyone can give. He starts missing the little ways you made his life easier, the way you used to check on him, the way you cared about his day, the way you brought calm into his chaos. When those things disappear, he begins to see that they were not small gestures. They were the foundation of emotional safety he never acknowledged. And now that space feels cold without you. That silence feels heavy. That distance feels unfamiliar. He realizes how much he leaned on something he never protected. And the deeper truth is this: your silence becomes evidence of your boundaries. You're no longer willing to carry emotional weight alone. You're no longer competing with his laziness. You're no longer filling the gaps he refuses to fill. By stepping back, you show him that you are capable of living without him, capable of choosing your peace over inconsistency, and capable of letting go of anyone who doesn't treat you with value. And that realization, knowing that you don't need him the way he thought you did, shakes him more than any confrontation ever could. When you match a man's distance, you teach him something he didn't expect to learn: that you have boundaries, that you have self-respect, and that you are strong enough to walk away when someone refuses to meet you halfway. A lot of men assume that because you're loyal, because you care deeply, because you've been there through the ups and downs, you're just naturally going to stay, no matter how inconsistent they become. They confuse your loyalty with dependence. They assume your kindness means you'll tolerate anything. But when you step back and mirror the energy he gives you, he learns a lesson that words could never teach him. He realizes that you are not afraid to choose yourself. Every time you match his distance, you are silently saying, "I'm not chasing. I'm not begging. I'm not forcing something that's not being reciprocated." And that right there becomes a powerful shift. A man who once believed you would always fix things now sees that you're done patching up wounds you didn't create. You're done carrying emotional weight that was never meant to be yours alone. He begins to understand that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Matching his distance also tells him that you have emotional discipline. You're not reacting out of anger. You're not trying to get attention. You're not playing games. You're simply giving him the same space he has chosen. That kind of calm control shakes a man more than any argument ever could. Because arguments give him attention. Arguments feed his ego. Arguments tell him you still care enough to fight. But silence, distance, that tells him you've shifted your energy. That tells him you're thinking differently. That tells him you're not tied to the connection the way he assumed. As he watches you step back, he starts questioning what he did wrong. More importantly, he starts questioning why you tolerated things for so long and why you finally decided not to anymore. That uncertainty makes him reflect, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior now requires him to. A man who is used to being chased feels confusion when the chasing stops. A man who relied on your emotional strength feels uneasy when you're no longer carrying the weight. And a man who thought he had time starts to panic when he realizes the clock has been running while he was distracted. Perspective shifts because distance exposes the strength he underestimated. He begins to see you in a new light. Before, he may have taken your presence lightly because it was consistent, but now he realizes that consistency was a choice you made, not an obligation you had. He sees that you can move with intention, with dignity, with control. And that is something a man will always respect. Your distance becomes evidence that you know your worth. It also becomes a wake-up call. When you match a man's distance, you hold up a mirror to his behavior. He finally sees the effort he didn't give. He finally feels the silence you lived through. He finally understands the emotional gap he created, and now he has to decide whether he will step up or let the distance get wider. This is where the truth shows up, because the man who never intended to put effort into the connection will disappear. Your distance makes it easy for him to fade away because he was never invested to begin with. But the man who truly cares, your distance ignites something inside him. It pushes him to reevaluate, to change, to become better. It forces him to choose either growth or loss. Matching his distance makes him realize that losing you is a real possibility, and that possibility hits his pride, his emotions, and his understanding of what you truly meant to him. When he sees that you can detach without falling apart, it challenges the narrative he created in his mind. It shows him that you won't settle for half love. It shows him you won't accept emotional breadcrumbs. It shows him that you won't wait forever for someone to decide if you're worth the effort. And that realization becomes his turning point. If he values you, he will come closer. He will communicate more clearly. He will match your effort the way you once matched his. Not out of fear, but out of understanding, because distance taught him that love without effort is just convenience. And convenience loses its place when the person providing it stops trying. Your ability to match distance also builds a new level of self-trust within yourself. You see your own strength. You recognize your own boundaries. You understand your own value. You prove to yourself that you're not emotionally dependent, you're emotionally aware. And that awareness becomes your power. The quiet power that says, I don't need someone to choose me. I choose myself first. And a man feels that. He feels the shift in your energy. He feels the difference in your presence. He feels the weight of your silence. And that silence forces him to decide whether he will rise to meet you or step aside and make room for someone who will. Matching his distance isn't about revenge. It's about respect. It's about balance. It's about teaching someone that access to you is earned, not taken for granted. It's about reminding him and reminding yourself that love should never make you shrink. It should never make you chase. It should never make you compromise your worth. Distance is the language of boundaries, and when you speak it, the right man will understand it clearly.